Hi there, welcome to the Crazyhouse World Championship. I've had a busy week, so I haven't been able to broadcast any matches, but I know a lot of things have happened since we last met. As you might recall, Blitzbullet, the pre-tournament favorite, lost in the first round, 7-3, quite surprisingly against Legion Destroyer. But after that, Legion Destroyer has lost to Little Plotkin 7-3, and Little Plotkin has lost to Blitzbullet 7-3. So it's these three guys we find at the top, and they have beaten each other. Uh, so Blitzbullet beat Little Plotkin beat Legion Destroyer, and Legion Destroyer beat Blitzbullet. So that kind of even things out. Blitzbullet at the top has played a lot of matches, but the player who is still without a loss is Fumitox. He's won all his 1, 2, 3 matches so far. You can see he has 18 matches to go. The thing with Blitzbullet is he has won big when he won, beating PKNM 10-0. I didn't think we would see any 10-0 results this year, but today we're watching Kleerkast versus Mugwort. And Kleerkast is online. We're just waiting for Mugwort. Let's see. Mugwort has drawn his match against Zixon, very exciting match, 5-5, and lost narrowly against Legion Destroyer. Hi there, man with the head of dog. Welcome. Some players are quicker at playing their matches and some are slower. As you can see, Little Plotkin has only 5 matches remaining. Mixed results here. I don't think Little Plotkin will grab either first or second place. He has won big against Legion Destroyer, narrowly against Suanet, but he lost quite big against Fumitox and also against Spinal Tap, a bit surprisingly, and beat PKNM narrowly. So it's all about Blitzbullet and Fumitox, I think. Obviously, Legion Destroyer will have something to say about this, but he has lost not only to Little Plotkin, but also against Bugzilla. Bugzilla you see in 5th place, but Bugzilla, where is he? He's here. He has lost to Fumitox. So we have a lot of exciting matches remaining. And both players are seated, as you can see. They're very equal coming into this match. Although Kleerkast has won a lot of their latest encounters. So maybe that's an indication. They're quite evenly rated. Mugwort is an opening specialist, I would say. He brought a lot of interesting ideas to his match with Zixon and also gained a lot of favored positions out of the opening. But Kleerkast is a very interesting player, and maybe he will try to just get Mugwort out of the book. This certainly looks like an attempt to get Mugwort out of the book. So bringing the queen out this early is quite provocative. But not without poison. After the knight retreats, you get to pin this. And this queen is keeping e4 under control. So it looks like both players are out of the book. I suppose knight c6, putting pressure here on d4 would make sense, but this is also interesting. Black is just playing super active here in the opening. And white gives up a piece here for activity. Very interesting piece sacrifice here. I'm not sure what he was afraid of here, because he could have just moved the knight to, let's say, e5, when g4 would be hanging. So with 2 pawns in hand, black cannot take with the pawn because of pawn at g7, but he grabs more material, and there's a nasty fork coming here if black goes with his rook to g8. Maybe the opening experiment went wrong here for black. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't take. Well, I guess the idea is pawn takes, queen takes, interpose, take with the queen, and then take back with the queen here on. Because when you take back with the queen, you also protect the last rank. But look at this move. King takes, double check on g5, and queen d8 mate. That was a very pretty finish. And let's just see it from the other side of the board. King takes, bishop g5, double check, queen d8. And what if you play king e7? Well, you just pick up the queen, I suppose. Or maybe there's something quicker. I'm not sure. So, Kleerkast playing white. Yeah, it's the old Reti Tartakover mate. I seem to recall it was Reti Tartakover. And Kleerkast likes the fianchetto setup. Black is playing for the d4 weakness. Also, g3 might be an issue after bishop d6. For some reason I lost my sound, but let's... Oh, there it came back. So this is the idea here, just to snap the pawn on g3 and create weaknesses around the white king. But with only pawns in hand, white can do the scorched earth trick, and oh, so he takes with the bishop instead. Yeah, you want to have maybe the knight in combination with 2 diags. Maybe that's stronger. Well, if Leach has marked your account as a cheater, okay. I think you picked the wrong forum for discussing this matter. So Kleerkast got a minute out of the opening. That could prove valuable. With the extra bishop here, he has control of the dark squares that were left a bit weakened. And welcome everybody who's watching. If you're watching live or if you're watching afterwards. Because I know a lot of you like to watch my videos after the live broadcast. So what to do with white here? The pressure against d4 is quite annoying, and this knight is sitting just right here on f5. Not so easy for white to come up with a decent plan here. Yeah. Maybe bring the knight over here, covering some squares, because this knight was just hitting rock. Maybe you can play c3, just protecting the d4 pawn. Yeah, that's the white idea. And simply bring the bishop back. You probably want to have your queen on e1 instead. You know, Rahul, you're just one step away from getting banned from my chat also. So please discuss this matter somewhere else. Black hasn't found any real use for his pawns so far. Now with the H file open, and yeah, I kind of like black here because white has black square weaknesses, but he only has knights in hand, and knights are hopeless defenders when you have like a whole complex of weaknesses on a particular color. Not so easy to find any good squares for the knights. This is one way of putting a knight on the board, hitting b7, but also hitting e6. So maybe you can follow up with knight to f4, the queen here. Whoops, the queen on the e file, the knights. But black just plugs another pawn here on e5. And I like the way black is handling this game. Very nice positional squeeze here from black. Now I think you just leave the queen here. Why not pick up a knight on f4? You could, of course, you could move the queen, but yeah, I think it's stronger to pick up this. And you don't even bother protecting the pawn here on f4. You check here on h2, and if the king goes to the corner, you have knight g3, I suppose. I wonder what was wrong with knight g3. It looked super strong. So this gave white some chances. And this left the black king kind of squeezed here on e8. Both players down to Just seconds, and white actually managed to create counter chances here. Pawn h7 or queen h8 or some combination of those two moves. Pawn h7 now. And this is starting to look very, very dangerous for black. And in fact, it's forced mate. Knight f6 and take on f8. Wow, what a comeback there by Kleerkast. Because I'm quite sure that black was doing just fine here. Yeah, look at this position. Quite okay for black. But here white seemingly missed a chance by playing pawn h6. Okay. But after this, as you can see, taking on f4, the strongest move, pawn h2, very strong. But why didn't he go for knight at g3 check? That's a mystery. Looks very, very strong. Because after bishop takes f4, white is suddenly better. And especially after the very strong pawn at f6. Okay, so that turned around quickly. Let's see what happened here in the opening. So Kleerkast just switching from one system to another. The queen d5 move wasn't a big success. And apparently we are out of the book. White has sacrificed a piece for a pawn, but there are weaknesses here in the black camp. If white got the move here, he would probably go pawn f5, putting pressure on this pawn here. But black is trying to break the pressure. And the pawn drop here, I'm not sure I like it, because it was all about the light squares, and now all of a sudden this pawn here, it's on the queen side, not a very active pawn. Hard to make use of it later. I suppose you could just, yeah, maybe grab there, move to d5. Surely there was some better place for this pawn. Also, if white takes back, black might consider taking on c5 and then just take on d1. Just to disrupt. I wonder about bishop takes c5. It looked interesting to me. Black didn't want to trade rooks here, because pawn takes, rook takes here. Then the black queen would have to leave the d file. But this looks shaky, I think. White has a lot of chances here with the initiative. Maybe simply pawn e6, pulling the king out on the board even further. Hola, amigo. And if the king takes maybe knight f4. With a possible queen trade at some stage. There's just no safe way out for this king, because if you head in this direction, you will run into a bishop check on this diagonal with a horrible knight fork on e6. And I suppose you just trade queens here on d5. Or do you capture with the bishop? This is nice. Capture here, knight on f5, and we start smelling mate. Maybe castle first so you can recapture with the rook on d1 in case of the queen trade. And I'm tempted to place a knight here on d5. So the only thing that can stop white from winning this is the time issue. Black is paralyzed here. White has two queens in action, and the rook might join. So now there's the threat of rook at d8, which, well, I wouldn't say black missed it. It was just impossible to stop all the white threats. Let's see where... Where were we? What is better here? And I was a bit curious about this move. Yeah, bishop at b4 is another idea, but how bad is this? Maybe it's just bad. I don't know. We have basically the same opening here. And I'm not surprised that Mugwort is repeating this, because he got a very good position under the opening. It's not so much about first to some score, but they are actually playing 10 games, regardless of the result. So all the games count. Time limit is 3 minutes with a 2-second increment. And this is slightly different. Now white got an early rook to e1, putting some pressure here on down the e5. And this blocks the e file, also protects f5. No, it's not a matter of... this is not a knockout stage anymore. All the games count. So they will play all 10 games. Well, you do win the match, but you just want to gather as many game points as possible. So this is a typical reaction. Giving the rook some extra space. And also bringing this pawn one step closer to the enemy king. But I think White has found a much better idea here than he did in the last game. Because now his pieces are active. And obviously, 2 pieces threatening c6. And black doesn't spend time protecting here. Instead, he creates threats of his own. I'm wondering... because this pawn is very annoying. Do you simply take on g3, or what do you do here? Obviously, pawn at f2 or something is a bit of a threat. Yeah, he does take on g3. With a very interesting follow-up. I was kind of... I thought he might have taken c6 first. Because this is kind of a strange move order. Take first on c6 and then take on f7. But never mind. Because now black has the option not to take on c6. If you take on c6, then we're back on track with probably knight e5 check. And as I suspected, Mugwort ignores the bishop on c6. Instead, he covers some important squares here. And also, this bishop will help in a future black attack here. Pawn at h2 by black was probably a threat, so... oh, this is setting up a huge cannon here on h4. This is starting to look scary. Really scary. And can't you simply take on f3? What to do about this threat here on h2? I suspect you can just move the king if you... No, not f5. Okay. So a few checks here that black needs to take some care here. h6 maybe. And pretty soon out of checks, but at least this rook is not threatened anymore. I wonder if black really needed to allow rook takes with check. Looked like black was a bit surprised there that what happened to my attack. And now anything can happen. Virtually anything. This knight's strong in the defense. Watch out for g1. Yeah, epic game here. White's still surviving. And this could be any result here. Bishop takes probably, yes. Finally this bishop is participating in some sort of attack. And I wouldn't be surprised if actually white wins this. I see a queen hanging. You probably pick up the queen. And you have some strong defense here. Haha. 56 moves and counting. Threatening queen at f7 check. I thought the black king would hide on h7 instead, but... And I was surprised that white didn't play queen at f7, just to try to force a queen exchange. And with so many queens in hand, white is just winning now. Just needs to find the forced mate. And where is it? This rook is coming to the rescue. Or knight f7 checkmate here. Wow, what a game! It just never ended, did it? Well, we don't have the time for a deep analysis here. Let's just look at this. And pawn at g6 was much stronger. I was suggesting bishop takes here first, which is also much stronger. So I wonder how this is now. Probably good for white, but white slightly lost the thread here by taking on f7 first. And bishop at e3 was even stronger. So there is a fourth sequence here. Knight takes f3. And what was the idea here? Queen takes, pawn at f2. Oh, I see. Okay. And here it's much better to take with the queen rather than to allow rook takes e6 with check. And all of a sudden, the black attack comes to standstill because at some point you can put a knight on f1. And then the game just went on forever. I'm sure both sides missed a lot of chances. So what's happening here? A theoretical duel. And Mugwort hasn't spent much time here. He's given up 2 pieces for 2 pawns, but with a tremendous pressure here on black. So I'm pretty sure that this is something that Mugwort had on his chessboard at home. So this is interesting, trying to make use of this pin here. So if white takes, queen takes here. But, okay. Still it might be playable because after, no. Or? I'm thinking pawn takes, queen takes, pawn here. If the king goes to e7, you have knight f5 picking up the queen. Take, queen takes, pawn here, king d8, pawn c7, and then simply take on b5 and recapture the queen. So certainly it's interesting to take on c6. But he didn't take on c6. And is there something that prevents knight takes? Yeah, probably pawn d7. So somehow you would like to take d5, just get some air for your king. But at the same time, then you feed the white army. So you would like to keep the trades to an absolute minimum. Maybe you... No, you don't need to. So maybe queen d4, threatening pawn f7, and pick up the knight on b4. And in case of bishop d6, you can just take on b4 now. Because bishop takes, you have knight f5 mate. So this knight is actually hanging. But the black response was quick here. Now you're threatening to take the queen. So I suspect some sort of... Well, notice that it's hanging on h2 as well. This is starting to get a bit tricky. And what makes it even trickier is that Kleerkast is down to his last few seconds. He's trying to conjure up an attack of himself. Oops. You can't allow knight takes d8 check, so he needs to go out on the board, and that's certainly not a place where you want to be. Probably knight b5, take on d8 with check. You need to go to... Okay, but now you just take with check, so this is over. All right. I thought the position was quite interesting there. So, a lot of options here for black. And actually not, it's a playable position maybe. But after this, it was just over. So far, white has won all the games, but Kleerkast is maybe a bit lucky to be behind by only 3-2. So in this game, he's chosen not to develop his knight to c3, but rather play his pawn to c3, protecting d4 instead. And that sent Mugwort thinking a little bit. So this is completely different from the previous games where Kleerkast was white. And I'm sure white is hoping for bishop takes, pawn takes, where you can take advantage of the semi-open e-file and you have even greater coverage here for your king's position. So I suspect... But on the other hand, you need to be careful here, because if you go back, maybe g4 will come. So instead, black makes what probably is a pseudo-sacrifice. I don't think white will dare to take on g4, opening the h file. It looks way too dangerous. Sometimes you might consider taking on h3, bishop takes and pawn g4. And apparently this was one of those times when black considered doing that. Although I'm not so sure who this favors. Bishop e7 would be the natural response, because if you can bring the queen in front of your king, that's usually a good position. But here you might also consider swinging your knight over to the king side. I'm surprised that White gave up his bishop rather than the knight, but Kleerkast is always looking forward to the enemy king, and he found a way to hopefully crack the black king open. But it doesn't have that much material. And there seems to be an escape route in case the going gets tough here on the king side. So I would just go to e8 and then maybe d7. And I would certainly not spend this much time. Maybe he was afraid of king e8, knight e6, but you can always just ignore. Let's say in this position. King e8, knight e6, you can just protect whatever you have here. Bishop at g2, and then you have threats of bishop h2, knight g4 with mate on h2. So this for me was a surprising choice to keep the king not only on the king side, but also advancing it to the third rank. Yeah, why not keep the checks going? You might have a knight fork here on e6. This knight, very nice. Protecting, attacking. And Mugwort down to his last 10 seconds. Probably just knight f4 again. With a very nasty threat here, bishop at h4, picking up the queen. And maybe pawn g5, followed by queen h6, something like that. You might also consider queen at h8, yeah. Cutting off the black king here, and this is surely the end. Knight e6 mate. Nice finish there by Kleerkast. And it's 3-3. Very exciting match. And let's see what Kleerkast has up his sleeve in this game. He's been trying to throw Mugwort off in the opening, and this is the theoretical line. With some nasty traps for black. And as you can see, Mugwort has played this before. Putting the bishop here on h5 makes a lot of sense, because not only do you pin this knight, but also you deprive White from access to the h5 square. But now white is building momentum here. Knight h5 maybe. And you might even consider queen takes followed by knight takes in the next move. Don't forget that white has a bishop and pawn in hand, whereas black has placed all his pieces on the board. So the white position is more flexible at this point. So this was probably the only move, protecting g7. Maybe black is threatening to take on d4. Then again, maybe he's not. Because there are some nasty checks here, knight at f6 at some point. Maybe. Let's say knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and then simply knight at f6 could be potentially a huge problem. I'm not sure, but could be a problem. Because you also open up the G file. So you need to be a little bit careful. I'm sure black is calculating here. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight at f6, pawn takes, knight takes, maybe queen takes. Maybe it's not so bad for black after all. And if the queen takes here, you can probably take on c3 with a possible knight fork here on e2, picking up the queen, either on d4 or on c3. And obviously taking on h5 is a real threat. Maybe a simple move like e5 is a threat also. So Mugwort making use of the whole board here, putting the bishop on h8. And if the rook moves, you have knight at f6. Using this e5 move just to protect the knight on d4, which is important, and then also threatening the white queen on g4. And this is so super sharp now. I suppose you want to pick up this, probably with the pawn, because you want to keep the bishop in the defense somewhat. Also covering some knight checks here if the king flees over to the queen side. The point after this is that black has a knight h3 option. So what is this? getting the queen out of trouble and creating some threats. But what to do now? Surely queen takes g3 that wasn't what black was hoping for. This knight covers g4, so I don't see any tricks here. There's a mate threat here on e8. Wait a minute. Pawn takes rook g4, no, rook g2. Wow. Pawn takes rook g2. You can't take because of bishop h3. And this is close to mate. Queen d2, bishop. Where do you find the mate? This wasn't it. Oh, you have at least a perpetual here. Because if pawn takes, queen takes. So I guess Kleerkast will go for the perpetual here. But I think he missed a mate. He must have missed a mate here. Oh, isn't there perpetual? No. There was a way out for... Oh, what a game. Another epic game here. And Mugwort takes this. Just closing some exits before knight d7 and queen f7 delivers mate, or knight c7. Wow, what a game. Yeah, this is where I recommended d takes c3. You get rid of the knight, you get a knight in hand for your attack, and you keep your bishop in the defense. But you should have taken with the pawn instead here on g3, because this allowed knight f3, which should have won the game. But he put his rook on g1 instead. And what is the difference? Well, it's not much. Let's see. Queen here. Rook at d2. And simply checkmate. That was simple enough. But what he played should have won also. Yeah, pick up e1 with check, of course. But there is a mate here. And it doesn't start with bishop g4. It starts with bishop at e4. Okay. Not so easy to see. But apparently white is safe here. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, what happens here? We have the same setup as in the last game with an early c3. This time the bishop went back. There was no knight competing of the space here on the king's side, and early h5. So the h file open, but this is a nice move. Remember this. It should be a part of your defensive tricks. This will close the H file sooner or later. And also there will be weaknesses in the black position. So I think white will just leave this pawn here on H6. Let black take. Focus on the weaknesses here and maybe pick up the G4 pawn. This should be quite okay for white. Do you take on G7 maybe? The only piece in the white position that I don't like is the knight here on D2. I'm not sure what to do with this, but let's say you take here on F6, queen takes and bishop at G5. I suppose you could just maybe take and bishop H2, go back and then pick up two pieces for a queen. How about bishop at G5 now? Because if you compare it with the last line that I mentioned, now the rook will be hanging on H6. So the same mechanism doesn't quite apply. Pawn H3 looks tempting. And this just looks very dangerous after bishop H3. I suppose you might consider just picking up the bishop as well. Bishop H3. Well, clear, you can't take here. You need to go here. And then pawn. What was wrong with bishop at H3? I don't get it. Maybe just take with the queen here. Or does black even have an attack here? I don't quite see it. So what is anticipating a long castle when this bishop will be well situated here on B5? So if the bishop takes, you have queen takes a8. But now maybe it's the time to just forget about this queen and just push forward. Yeah, bishop at f6. Yeah, why not? Let's use this as cannon fodder. You have bishop g5, or possibly, yeah, simple mate. Nice win there by Kleerkast. Difficult defense. And somewhere around here, you should have taken on h6. Because this is so dangerous. And why didn't he play bishop at h3 check here? It's quite the mystery. It's super strong. Because after this, white was just better. So it's 4-4. And they play yet another theoretical line. And surely this isn't coming as a surprise. But wait a minute here. In a position like this, I always start wondering, can I just take here? Knight takes here, because you do get a piece and a pawn. And this knight is not in good shape here on h4. So let's have a look at that afterwards. Because this should favor white. Great pressure here with the bishops. Yeah, maybe we'll see a white 10-0 victory here. Hi there, by the way. A very natural move, if white gets the chance, is knight at h5. I kind of feel sorry for Mugwort, because he has had so many great positions in this tournament. And black didn't see a good move here, so fearing knight at h5, he just played rook g8 voluntarily, and this is not a good sign. So white will probably skip the ideas of weakening g7, because the g file will be open. Maybe just simply castle, play some chess, when the black king will be eternally doomed to a future in the center. You could also consider rook b1 just to protect b2 from bishop at b2 attacks. But white is optimistic here. He voluntarily opens the g file. And is there even an option? Why don't you just take on f6 with the pawn instantly? Or there's some other moves here? So apparently this was the idea, to bring the queen into the attack. Threatening h7. But am I convinced? You're also threatening knight at g7. I suppose. So this takes care of the g7 square. Also takes care of any future checks here on the back rank. And white needs to be a bit careful here, because if black can take on c3, pawn on b2, this could quickly turn around. The black pieces are quite active here in the defense. Threatening pawn at g7, but black could very well put a pawn of his own on g7. And once again, knight takes here might be interesting. Also a pawn on e3 might be interesting. And what is the black idea here? Yeah, you need to be super active. This threatens knight takes f3 check. So black is going for it here. He just wants to crack the position open quickly now. What's this? I don't understand this at all. Huge blunder by Mugwort. King d1, take here on c3, king f1, bishop takes b5, king takes, knight takes h4, it's over. So maybe we will finally see a black win here. White is hoping to get the knight instead. And this keeps, and probably just take here. And black would love to take with check on h4. Can he? Well, I suppose he can. At some point. No, well, he doesn't need to. Okay. Kleerkast turned that one around very quickly. Great idea here. Knight takes d4, which just sets the board on fire, and white completely missed the idea. And this is actually a forced mate. Huge blunder by Mugwort, and Kleerkast takes the lead. 5-4. Yeah, it wasn't easy to find the mate after king g3, but I think black did it quite well. I was a little bit surprised that it took with the bishop here. I thought the idea was to take with the pawn. So this should be a completely normal position. And pawn takes, I suppose, is the natural move. Actually threatening to win a pawn here, either bishop takes, or the other way around. But need to be a little bit careful. Knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes. Could be a possibility. But here I think queen a4 and the knight needed to go back. So, interesting. Black is prepared to give up a piece just to activate his pieces. Pawn takes, queen takes, and never mind the rook in the corner. Knight takes, knight c7, king d7, and you can just recapture if you like. Interesting move. And I think white was wise to just ignore the knight. And I think black was probably wise to recapture here. The problem with the pawn on c3 is that there's no natural way to get these pieces out. Black has already solved his problems on the queen side. Even though this knight doesn't have a very bright future, at least it controls some squares in the center. And it could go over to the king side if it likes to in the future. So once again, the h-pawn is starting his journey down the h-file. Maybe white is hoping to play e4, but then again the light squares would be slightly weakened. So this is the kind of position where you will be looking at knight takes d4, I think. Knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen a4. If you go back, maybe. So white solved the problem with the knight here. There is a black knight hanging, but I don't think you want to take here. Pawn takes, or can you play knight d5 then? Maybe knight d5. Oh, it takes on d6. So white with the initiative here. He has weaknesses of his own, but for the time being, the black queen is under attack. Hi there, Gingerbread Man. Yeah, this is a very exciting match. I like both Kleerkast and Mugwort. Very creative players, aggressive players with slightly clashing styles. And it does seem as if white got the best out of this. Probably leave the this is risky, yeah. This is what black was hoping for. Take, queen trade, and pawn here, and ooh. Pawn here first. Trade queens. I don't like the look of this. Obviously, white can't take on d1 because of the mate here on h2. Maybe some kind of bishop check here. But the king can keep running. And now also, just leave these knights looking at each other. I'm almost tempted to take on e2 here. But I couldn't find the follow-up. The point was that I wanted to get rid of this bishop to secure g2. And now maybe white has some chances, but how is rook e1? Rook e1. Oops. You could have under-promoted there, couldn't you? But here, black needs to find something. Is there even something? Complete mayhem here in the position. And it looks like black finally is safe. And white just doesn't have enough pieces. If only he had one more pawn. But here comes the black attack. With mate in the next move. 5-5. Well, I guess that was justice. Interesting idea here. Yeah, queen g6 check looks better. And here, I had a bad feeling about king takes h2. I'm sorry, but king h1 seems much, much safer. And here knight takes e5. Indeed, this is good for black. And what is the best response here? Well, it seems as if black is safe. So take the rook in the corner and take f2. And I think I mentioned rook at e1. What happens here? Seems very, very natural. Just to get rid of the rook. Opening up for more checks. But still black is fine up until this moment. Probably a lot of good continuations here. Bishop at g8. And then take with the queen on g3. Look at that. Okay. But apparently black was safe after white missed the chance to check on g8. So 5-5. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to subscribe if you like my live streams. Maybe I can get a hot dog in a year or so if you subscribe. Let's see if there are any more matches scheduled. No, not that I can see. So, if there are any more matches this weekend, I will probably be able to stream them. And if not,